You talk too much. Not just with your words, but with your energy, your reactions, your need to be seen, validated, understood. Weakness is loud. Power is quiet. The most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to prove anything. This audiobook will teach you how to move in silence, build discipline in the dark, and let your results speak so loudly that your words become unnecessary. Because when you master quiet power, you stop chasing attention and start commanding respect. Chapter 1. Say less, observe more. You talk too much. Not just out loud, but in your head, in your reactions, in your constant need to respond to everything. And every time you do that, you lose power. Because talking reduces awareness. That's the truth. When you speak, you stop seeing. When you react, you stop understanding. When you rush to respond, you lose the ability to read the room. And in life, the one who sees more wins more. So if you want quiet power, you need to learn one thing. Say less, observe more. Say it again. Say less, observe more. Talking reduces awareness. Every word you say costs you something: energy, focus, information. Most people don't realize this. They think talking gives them control. It doesn't. It exposes them. When you talk too much, you reveal your intentions. You reveal your insecurities. You reveal your need to be heard. And once people see that, you lose leverage. You have a choice. You can either be the person who fills every silence or the person who understands everything happening within it. Because silence isn't empty. It's full of information. But you'll never see it if you keep talking. Look around. The loudest person in the room is usually the least aware. They interrupt, they overshare, they react instantly. And while they're busy being heard, they're missing everything. They don't notice tone. They don't notice hesitation. They don't notice what's not being said. But the quiet one, they see it all. That's the difference. Talking is noise. Observation is power. You don't need their permission to stay silent. You don't need to prove you belong by speaking. You don't need to fill space just because it feels uncomfortable. That discomfort, that's where awareness begins. Silence sharpens perception. Silence forces you to pay attention. When you stop talking, your senses wake up. You start noticing patterns. You start reading people. You start seeing what others miss. That's the key. Because most people are predictable. They reveal themselves constantly through their words, their body language, their timing. But you won't catch any of it if you're too busy preparing your next sentence. You have a choice: talk or learn. You can't do both at the same time. That's why the most powerful people aren't the fastest talkers. They're the best observers. They pause. They listen fully. They let others speak first. Why? Because information flows toward silence. People reveal more when they think you're just listening. They relax. They drop their guard. They expose their intentions. And you gather everything. That's leverage. Say it again. Listen, watch, learn. Not once, not sometimes, always. Listen, watch, learn. When you walk into a room, observe. Who leads? Who follows? Who seeks attention? Who avoids eye contact? When someone speaks, observe. Are they confident or compensating? Are they calm or trying too hard? Are they truthful or performing? You don't need to guess. You just need to watch. Silence gives you that advantage. Talking takes it away. Listen, watch, learn. This is your new rule, not just something you try, something you become. Listen, watch, learn. You repeat it until it replaces your old habits. Because right now, your instinct is to react. Someone says something, you respond immediately. Someone challenges you, you defend instantly. Someone shares, you interrupt with your own story. That's weakness. Not because speaking is bad, but because you can't control it. You react without thinking. And when you react, you reveal. But when you pause, you control the situation. You have a choice: react or respond, react or observe, react or stay in control. That's the key. Start practicing silence, not awkward silence, intentional silence. Let people finish their thoughts. Let moments breathe. Let conversations slow down. You'll feel uncomfortable at first. Good. That means you're breaking the habit. Because most people talk to escape discomfort. They fill silence because they can't handle it. But you sit in it. You own it. And over time, you start to see more than anyone else in the room. That's when things change. You gain leverage by knowing more than you reveal. Information is power, but only if you keep it. The moment you reveal everything, you lose your edge. Think about it. If people know exactly what you think, what you plan, what you feel, where's your advantage? There is none. You become predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. You have a choice: reveal everything or hold your cards. Because the less you say, the more people wonder. And when people wonder, they pay attention. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates respect. Respect creates influence. That's the chain. But most people break it immediately. They overshare. They explain too much. They talk just to feel included. And in doing so, they give away their power. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't need to explain your moves. You don't need to announce your intentions. Move differently. Speak when necessary. Reveal only what serves you, nothing more. That's the key. When you know more than you reveal, you control the frame. You see what others don't. You understand what others miss, and you act with precision. While they're guessing, you're executing. Observers win. Reactors lose. This is where everything comes together. There are two types of people: reactors and observers. Reactors move fast, they speak quickly, they feel everything and show it immediately. Observers move differently. They pause, they process, they choose. And that difference, it decides everything. Reactors get pulled into drama. Observers stay above it. Reactors say things they regret. Observers say only what matters. Reactors reveal weakness. Observers build quiet strength. You have a choice every single moment: react or observe. React or stay in control. React or win. Because winning isn't about being louder. It's about being sharper, calmer, more aware. That's the key. When you stop reacting, you start seeing. When you start seeing, you start understanding. And when you understand, you start winning. Say it again. Observers win. Reactors lose. Burn that into your mind. Final takeaway. From this moment forward, you change one habit. You stop talking so much. Not completely, but intentionally. You pause before speaking. You listen fully. You observe everything. Listen, watch, learn. That becomes your default. Because the less you say, the more you see. And the more you see, the more power you have. That's the shift. That's how you move differently. And once you master this, you're ready for the next level. Because observation gives you awareness, but what you do with that awareness, that's where real discipline begins. Next, you'll learn how to eliminate the need to impress and finally detach from the opinions that keep you weak. Stay sharp, stay silent, and keep watching. Chapter 2. Eliminate the need to impress. You're trying too hard. Not always in obvious ways, but it's there. In how you speak, in how you act, in how you adjust yourself depending on who's watching. You want to be liked. You want to be respected. You want to be seen as capable, confident, successful. So you perform. And that performance, it's costing you everything. Because the moment you try to impress, you lose control. That's the truth. Power doesn't try to impress. Power doesn't seek approval. Power doesn't perform. Power moves with certainty, quiet, grounded, unshaken. You have a choice: chase approval or build real strength, because you can't do both. Impressing others drains your focus. Every time you try to impress someone, you shift your focus away from what matters. Instead of doing the work, you think about how it looks. Instead of improving, you think about how you're perceived. Instead of growing, you start performing. That's the trap. You're no longer building your life. You're managing an image. And image is fragile. It needs constant attention, constant validation, constant maintenance. That's exhausting. You have a choice: focus on results or focus on appearance. Because focusing on both, that's how you fail at both. Say it again: results over image, always. When you stop trying to impress, you gain something powerful: clarity. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What needs to be done?" That's the shift. That's the key. Approval seeking creates weak decisions. When you need approval, you stop making strong decisions. You hesitate. You second guess. You adjust yourself to fit expectations. And slowly, you lose yourself. Because now every move you make is filtered through one question: will they like this? That question will destroy you. It will make you smaller, safer, weaker. You won't take risks. You won't speak truth. You won't act boldly. Because you're afraid of losing approval. But listen carefully. Approval is not power. It's dependence. And dependence makes you controllable. You have a choice: seek approval or build independence. Because independence doesn't ask, it decides. It moves forward without needing validation. It accepts that not everyone will agree, and moves anyway. That's strength. Say it again: you don't need their permission. Not to act, not to grow, not to become who you're meant to be. Stop performing. Start becoming. Most people are acting. They walk into a room and instantly adjust. Different tone, different posture, different personality. Why? To fit in, to impress, to be accepted. That's performance. And performance is fake strength. It looks good on the surface, but it collapses under pressure because it's not real. You have a choice: perform or become. Becoming is different. It's internal. It doesn't change based on the audience. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't seek applause. It just is. When you become disciplined, you don't need to show it. When you become confident, you don't need to prove it. When you become strong, you don't need to announce it. That's quiet power. Say it again. Become, don't perform. Because performers chase attention, but those who become, they command respect without asking for it. Indifference to opinion is real power. This is where most people break. They care too much about what people think, about how they're judged, about how they're perceived, and that care controls them. It dictates their actions, limits their potential, keeps them stuck. But here's the truth. People will judge you no matter what. If you succeed, they'll question it. If you fail, they'll criticize it. If you stay quiet, they'll misunderstand it. So why are you trying to control something you can't? You have a choice. Care about opinions or focus on your path. Because the more you care, the less you control. And the less you care, the more freedom you gain. That's the key. Indifference is not arrogance. It's clarity. It's knowing what matters and ignoring what doesn't. Say it again. Their opinion doesn't define me. Burn that into your mind, because once you stop caring, you start moving differently, more boldly, more freely, more effectively.
Respect is earned quietly. You don't get respect by trying to impress. You get it by how you move, consistently, quietly, relentlessly. Respect isn't given to performers, it's given to those who show up, day after day, without needing recognition. You don't need to talk about your goals, you don't need to explain your vision, you don't need to prove your worth, you just need to work. That's it. Because over time, people notice, not because you told them, but because they see the results. That's real respect. Not loud, not instant, but unshakable. You have a choice. Chase attention or build respect. Because attention is temporary. Respect lasts. Say it again. Let your actions speak. Final takeaway. From this moment forward, you stop trying to impress. You stop adjusting yourself for approval. You stop performing for validation. You stop caring about opinions that don't matter. And you start focusing on one thing: becoming. Stronger, sharper, more disciplined. Quietly. Because the less you try to impress, the more powerful you become. That's the shift. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their attention. You need discipline. And once you build that, everything changes. Because now you're no longer reacting. You're no longer performing. You're in control. And that control leads to the next level. Because once you stop trying to impress, you're ready to master something even deeper: your response. Not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. Next, you'll learn how to slow down your reactions and turn every situation into an advantage. Stay focused, stay grounded, and stop trying to prove anything.
Chapter 3. Master slow, controlled responses. You're too fast. Not physically, mentally. Too quick to react, too quick to speak, too quick to feel and show it. And every time you do that, you give up control. Because speed without control is weakness. That's the truth. Anyone can react fast. Anyone can speak without thinking. Anyone can let emotions take over. But very few people can do this: pause, breathe, choose their response. That's power. You have a choice: react instantly or respond deliberately. And that choice, it defines your entire life.
Fast reactions equals lost control. When something happens, someone disrespects you, challenges you, questions you. What do? You react immediately. You defend, you argue, you try to prove yourself. And in that moment, you lose. Not because you're wrong, but because you're uncontrolled. That's the key. Control is everything. The person who controls their response controls the situation. But when you react fast, you're not in control. Your emotions are. And emotions are unreliable. They change quickly. They exaggerate reality. They push you to say things you regret. You've seen it before. You say something in the heat of the moment, then later you think, I shouldn't have said that. Exactly. That's what fast reactions do. They expose weakness. You have a choice: react fast or respond with control. Because once words leave your mouth, you can't take them back. Slow responses signal confidence. Think about the most confident person you've ever seen. Do they rush to speak? No. They take their time. They pause before answering. They don't feel pressure to fill silence. They don't rush to defend themselves. Why? Because they don't need to. They're not trying to prove anything. That's confidence. Say it again. Confidence doesn't rush. Insecurity does. When you rush to respond, you signal pressure. You signal need. You signal that you're affected. But when you slow down, you send a different message. You show control. You show composure. You show strength. That's the key. Silence, even for a few seconds, changes everything. It shifts the dynamic. Now people wait for your response. Now your words carry weight. Now you control the pace. You have a choice: rush to speak or make your words matter. Because fewer words, delivered slowly, hit harder.
Pause, then decide. This is your new rule. Not sometimes, not when it's easy, every time. Pause, then decide. Burn it into your mind. Something happens? Pause. Someone speaks? Pause. You feel triggered? Pause. That pause is everything. Because inside that pause, you create space. Space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you take back control. That's where power lives. Not in reaction, in choice. You have a choice. Fill silence or use it. Because silence isn't empty. It's loaded. It builds tension. It creates presence. It makes your eventual words more powerful. Think about it. If you talk constantly, people stop listening. But if you speak rarely, every word matters. That's the key. Say it again. Silence is power. Not weakness, not awkwardness. Power. And the more comfortable you become with it, the stronger you become. You don't owe instant reactions. This is something you need to understand deeply. You don't owe anyone an immediate response. Not in conversation, not in conflict, not in life. But most people act like they do. They feel pressure to answer quickly, to respond immediately, to defend themselves right away. Why? Because they're afraid. Afraid of looking weak, afraid of being judged, afraid of losing control. But rushing doesn't give you control. It takes it away. You have a choice. React on their timeline or respond on yours. That's power. When you slow things down, you take ownership of the moment. You decide when to speak. You decide how to respond. You decide what matters. And that changes everything. Say it again. I respond when I'm ready, not when they expect, not when emotions push you. when you choose. Turn every situation into an advantage. When you master slow responses, something shifts. Situations that used to control you now work for you. Conflict? You stay calm. You think clearly. You respond strategically. Pressure? You don't panic. You slow down. You act with precision. Criticism? You don't react emotionally. You assess it. You decide what matters. That's the difference. Same situation, different response, different outcome. You have a choice. Be controlled by situations or control them. Because control doesn't come from force. It comes from composure, from patience, from the ability to stay steady when others break. That's the key. And it all starts with one habit: slowing down. Final takeaway. From now on, you stop reacting fast. You stop speaking without thinking. You stop letting emotions decide for you. And you replace it with one rule: pause, then decide. You slow everything down: your words, your reactions, your responses, because the slower you respond, the more control you have, and the more control you have, the more power you build. That's the shift. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to react instantly. You need control. And now, you're starting to build it. Because once you master your responses, you're ready for the next level. Taking everything you've built, your silence, your awareness, your control, and turning it into something even stronger: fuel. Next, you'll learn how to turn pain into private strength without needing attention, validation, or sympathy. Stay calm, stay slow, and stay in control. Chapter 4. Turn pain into private fuel. You feel it: the frustration, the anger, the disappointment, the pressure building inside you. And your first instinct? Show it. Talk about it. Complain about it. Let people know what you're going through. That's what most people do. And that's why most people stay weak. Because pain, when exposed carelessly, loses its power. But pain, when controlled, becomes fuel. That's the difference. You have a choice: express everything or transform it. Because pain is not your enemy. Misusing it is. Pain doesn't need an audience. Not everything you feel needs to be shared. Read that again. Not everything you feel needs to be shared. But in today's world, people do the opposite. They broadcast their struggles. They post their emotions. They look for sympathy, validation, understanding, and in doing so, they weaken themselves. Because the moment pain becomes performance, it stops being power. You have a choice: turn pain into attention or turn pain into strength. Because attention feels good, but it doesn't build you. It soothes you temporarily. It distracts you. It gives you a moment of relief. But then what? You're still stuck, still frustrated, still weak, still dependent on others to feel better. That's not power. Power is internal. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. Say it again. My pain is mine to use, not to display, not to explain. To use. Because when you stop seeking an audience, you start building strength. Suffer in silence, grow in silence. This is where most people break. Because silence during pain is uncomfortable. There's no release, no validation, no one telling you it's okay. It's just you and the pressure. Good. That's where growth happens. Say it again. Suffer in silence, grow in silence. Not forever, Not in a way that destroys you, but in a way that builds you. Because when you learn to carry pain without collapsing, you become dangerous. You stop needing support for every challenge. You stop reacting emotionally to every setback. You stop looking outside for solutions. You handle it, internally, quietly, effectively. That's the shift. You have a choice. Avoid discomfort or use it. Because pain avoided becomes weakness. Pain used becomes strength. Complaining weakens your resolve. Every time you complain, you lose a little bit of strength. That's the truth. Because complaining does one thing. It reinforces helplessness. It tells your mind, I can't handle this. This is too much. Something needs to change externally. And when you believe that, you give away your power. You become reactive, dependent, weak. You have a choice, complain or adapt, because adapting builds resilience, complaining builds excuses. Say it again, no complaints, only adjustments. That becomes your standard. You don't waste energy talking about what's wrong. You use that energy to fix it, to improve, to push forward, to grow stronger. That's the key. And it's not easy. You'll feel the urge to complain, to vent, to release. But you stop. You catch yourself, and you redirect that energy into action. Channel emotion into action. Emotion is powerful. Anger, frustration, disappointment. These are not weaknesses. They're energy. Raw, intense, focused energy. But most people waste it. They express it instead of using it. They talk instead of act. They release instead of channel. And once it's released, it's gone. No growth, no progress, no change. You have a choice. Waste emotion or use it. Because when you channel emotion into action, you become unstoppable. Angry? Good. Train harder. Frustrated? Good. Focus deeper. Disappointed? Good. Improve faster. That's the shift. You don't suppress emotion, you redirect it. Say it again. Feel it. Use it. Don't waste it. That becomes your mindset. Because emotion, when controlled, is fuel. And fuel moves you forward. Build strength without recognition. This is the part most people struggle with. Doing the work without anyone knowing. No praise, no validation, no recognition, just effort, just discipline, just consistency. In silence. You have a choice. Work for attention or work for growth. Because if you need recognition, you'll quit when it disappears. But if you work for growth, you become consistent, relentless, unstoppable. That's the key. Real strength is built in private, when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one even knows. That's where discipline is tested, and that's where it's built. Say it again. I don't need to be seen to improve. Burn that into your identity. Because once you stop needing recognition, you unlock a different level of focus, a different level of commitment, a different level of power. Pain is a tool. Use it wisely. At the end of the day, pain is inevitable. You will feel it. Failure, rejection, pressure, loss. It's coming. You can't avoid it, but you can choose how you use it. That's everything. You have a choice. Let pain break you or let it build you. Because the same pain that destroys one person creates another. The difference? Control, discipline, mindset. Say it again. Pain is fuel if I use it right. That becomes your advantage. While others complain, you build. While others collapse, you strengthen. While others seek sympathy, you seek progress. That's the separation. That's quiet power. Final takeaway. From now on, you stop exposing your pain. You stop complaining about your struggles. You stop seeking validation for your difficulties. And you start using everything you feel as fuel. Suffer in silence, grow in silence. That becomes your standard. Because the more you control your pain, the more power you gain. That's the shift. You don't need sympathy. You don't need attention. You don't need anyone to understand. You need discipline. And now you're building it. Because once you master your pain, you're ready for the next level, turning that silent strength into visible action. Next, you'll learn how to let your actions speak first, without announcing, explaining, or seeking approval. Stay strong, stay silent, and keep building. Chapter 5. Make your actions speak first. You say too much, too early. You talk about your plans. You announce your goals. You explain what you're about to do. And in that moment, you weaken your own execution. Because words feel like progress, but they're not. They're a substitute, a temporary satisfaction that tricks you into thinking you've already moved forward. That's the trap. You have a choice. Talk about it or do it. Because the more you talk, the less you execute. And the more you execute, the less you need to talk. That's the shift. Words create illusion. Actions create reality. Talking feels productive. You explain your vision. You share your ideas. You describe your future. And people respond. They nod. They encourage you. They validate you. And that validation? It gives you a false sense of progress, like you've already accomplished something. But you haven't. You've just described it. That's the danger. You have a choice. Chase the feeling of progress or build real progress. Because real progress is quiet. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need attention. It just happens, step by step, rep by rep, day by day. Say it again. Talk less, do more. Not sometimes, always. Because reality doesn't care about your words. It responds to your actions. Stop announcing. Start executing. Most people announce everything. New goals, new habits, new plans. They make it public. Why? Because it feels good. It creates pressure. It creates identity. It creates the illusion of commitment. But here's the truth. Announcement is not execution. In fact, it often replaces it. Because once you tell people what you're going to do, you feel like you've already started. That's the trap. You have a choice. Announce your intentions or protect them. Because when you keep your goals private, you remove the pressure to perform for others. Now it's just you, your standards, your discipline, your execution. That's the key. Say it again. Less announcement, more action. Let people find out later. Let them notice the results. Let them ask questions. That's when your actions start speaking. Show results, not intentions. Anyone can talk. Anyone can say what they're going to do. Anyone can describe their future. But very few people follow through. That's why results matter. Because results are proof, not promises, not ideas, not intentions. Proof. You have a choice. Be someone who talks or someone who delivers. Because when you deliver, you don't need to explain. It's obvious. People see it. They feel it. They respect it. That's the difference. Words create expectations. Actions create credibility. Say it again. Show. Don't tell. Burn that into your mind. Because the moment you stop explaining, you start building something real. Let people discover your progress. There's power in surprise. When people expect nothing from you and then suddenly see results, it hits harder. It creates impact. It creates respect. Because you didn't talk about it, you just did it. You have a choice. Tell people everything or let them discover it. Because discovery creates curiosity. Curiosity creates attention. Attention creates influence. That's the chain. But if you reveal everything up front, you lose it. There's no surprise, no impact, no moment. That's why quiet progress is powerful. You move in silence, you build consistently, and then one day, it shows. That's the key. Say it again. Let them see it when it's real, not before, not during, after. Action builds confidence, not talking. A lot of people think confidence comes from speaking well, from sounding strong, from convincing others. That's not real confidence. Real confidence comes from doing, from showing up, from executing, from proving to yourself that you can follow through. That's where it's built, internally. You have a choice. Talk yourself into confidence or build it through action. Because talking doesn't create belief. Action does. Every time you do what you said you would do, you build trust with yourself. And that trust, that's confidence. Say it again. Confidence is built, not spoken. You don't need to sound confident. You need to become it. And becoming it requires action. Silence plus action equals respect. This is where everything connects. Silence alone is not enough. Action alone is not enough. But together, they create something powerful. Silence removes noise. Action builds results. And when you combine both, you become undeniable. You don't talk much, but you deliver consistently. You don't explain yourself, but your results explain everything. That's quiet power. You have a choice. Be loud with no results or silent with undeniable proof. Because in the long run, only one of those earns respect. Say it again. Move in silence, deliver in results. That becomes your identity. Stop talking yourself out of doing. There's another problem with talking too much. You start overthinking. You analyze everything. You explain every detail. You imagine every outcome. And eventually, you don't act at all. Because now it feels complicated, heavy, overwhelming. That's what happens when you stay in your head. You have a choice. Think endlessly or act immediately. Because action simplifies everything. It cuts through doubt. It eliminates overthinking. It creates clarity. That's the key. Say it again. Less thinking, more doing. Not reckless action, but decisive action. Because progress comes from movement, not discussion. Final takeaway. From this moment forward, you stop talking about what you're going to do. You stop announcing your plans. You stop explaining your intentions. You stop seeking validation before execution. And you replace it with one standard: action first, words later. You build quietly. You execute consistently. You let results speak for you. Because the less you say, the more powerful your actions become. That's the shift. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to prove anything with words. You need results. And now you're focused on building them. Because once your actions start speaking, you enter a new level. A level where you don't need recognition and you're not affected by misunderstanding. Next, you'll learn how to become comfortable being misunderstood and why that's one of the highest forms of strength. Stay disciplined, stay silent, and keep executing. Chapter 6. Become comfortable with being misunderstood. They don't get you. They question you. They doubt you. They misread your silence. They misinterpret your actions. And your instinct? Fix it. Explain yourself. Clarify your intentions. Make sure they understand who you are and what you're doing. But that instinct? It's keeping you weak, because the moment you need to be understood, you become dependent on other people's perception, and that is not power. Power doesn't chase understanding. Power doesn't beg for clarity. Power doesn't explain itself to everyone. Power moves forward, regardless. You have a choice: be understood or be effective, because most of the time, you can't have both. Not everyone is supposed to understand you. This is the first truth you need to accept. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Read that again. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Different people have different mindsets, different standards, different levels of discipline. So when you start moving differently, quietly, intentionally, with control, they won't get it. They'll question it. Why are you so quiet? Why don't you say more? Why are you doing it this way? And if you're not careful, you'll start adjusting yourself to make them comfortable. That's the trap. You have a choice: adjust to be understood or stay aligned with your path. Because if you keep adjusting, you lose direction. You dilute your discipline. You weaken your identity. You become average again. That's not what you want. Say it again. They don't need to understand me. You do. That's enough. Misunderstanding is a sign of growth. When people stop understanding you, it usually means you've changed, you've evolved, you've leveled up, you've moved beyond their expectations, and that creates friction. Because now you're no longer predictable, and people don't like that. They prefer consistency, familiar behavior, clear patterns. But growth breaks patterns. It disrupts expectations. It creates distance. That's normal. You have a choice: see misunderstanding as a problem or see it as progress. Because the more you grow, the fewer people will fully understand your path. And that's okay. Say it again. Growth creates distance, not because you're better, but because you're different. And different is uncomfortable for most people. Stop explaining your vision. Your vision is yours, not theirs. They don't see what you see. They don't feel what you feel. They don't carry your goals, your standards, your discipline. So why are you trying to explain it? You think if they understand, they'll support you. Maybe, but even if they do, it doesn't change the work. It doesn't make execution easier. It doesn't build discipline. It doesn't move you forward. So what's the point? You have a choice: explain everything or stay focused. Because every time you stop to explain, you lose momentum. You shift your energy outward instead of forward. That's the cost. Say it again. No explanation, just execution. Let your vision stay internal, protected, untouched by doubt, opinions, or misunderstanding. Because once you start explaining it too much, you expose it to people who don't see it, and that weakens your focus. Clarity within, approval outside. Most people are confused internally, so they look for clarity externally. They ask for opinions. They seek validation. They want reassurance. And when they don't get it, they hesitate. They doubt themselves. They slow down. They stop. That's what happens when your clarity depends on others. You have a choice: seek clarity within or chase approval outside. Because clarity within is stable. It doesn't change based on opinions. It doesn't collapse under pressure. It doesn't depend on understanding. It's yours. And when you have that, you don't need anyone else to get it. Say it again. I trust my direction, even if no one else does. That's strength. That's quiet power. Ignore the noise. Stay focused. People will talk. They'll question you. They'll judge you. They'll misunderstand your silence and assume weakness. Let them, because their noise is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is focus, staying locked in, staying disciplined, staying consistent. You have a choice: listen to the noise or stay on your path. Because every time you engage with it, you lose time, you lose energy, you lose momentum. That's the cost. Say it again: stay focused, ignore the noise. Not because you don't hear it, but because you don't let it affect you. That's control. You don't need to be liked to win. This is where most people struggle. They want to win, but they also want to be liked. And those two don't always align, because winning requires discipline, boundaries, focus, and not everyone will like that. Some will feel uncomfortable. Some will feel left behind. Some will misunderstand your silence as distance. That's part of it. You have a choice: be liked or be respected. Because respect comes from consistency, from discipline, from results, not from pleasing everyone. Say it again: I don't need to be liked to win. That becomes your mindset. Because once you accept that, you stop compromising, you stop adjusting, you stop performing, you just execute. Silence protects your direction. When you stop explaining, when you stop reacting, when you stop trying to be understood, something powerful happens. Your direction becomes clear, undisturbed, focused. Because now you're not influenced by every opinion. You're not distracted by every misunderstanding. You're moving in your own lane. That's the key. Silence protects your vision. It keeps it clean. It keeps it strong. It keeps it yours. You have a choice: expose your path to everyone or protect it. Because the more you expose it, the more noise you invite. And noise destroys clarity. Say it again: protect your path at all costs. Final takeaway. From this moment forward, you stop needing to be understood. You stop explaining your silence. You stop clarifying your every move. You stop adjusting yourself to fit other people's expectations. And you accept one truth: they don't need to get it. You do. That's enough. Because the more comfortable you become with being misunderstood, the stronger your focus becomes. That's the shift. You don't need approval. You don't need validation. You don't need everyone on your side. You need discipline. And now you're building it at a deeper level. Because once you stop needing to be understood, you unlock your final form, an identity built on quiet strength, unshaken, unbothered, unstoppable. Next, you'll learn how to build that identity and become the person who doesn't react, doesn't chase, and doesn't explain. Stay focused, stay silent, and keep moving forward. Chapter 7. Build an identity of quiet strength. This is where everything becomes permanent. Not temporary discipline, not occasional control, not moments of silence. Identity. Because what you do occasionally doesn't define you. What you repeat does. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you already have an identity. Maybe it's reactive. Maybe it's approval-seeking. Maybe it's emotional, loud, inconsistent. That identity? It's been built through repetition. And if you don't change it, you will keep repeating the same patterns. That's the truth. You have a choice: stay who you've been or become someone different. Because real transformation is not about effort. It's about identity. Identity drives behavior. You don't act based on goals. You act based on who you believe you are. Read that again. You don't act based on goals. You act based on identity. If you see yourself as someone who reacts, you will react. If you see yourself as someone who needs approval, you will seek it. If you see yourself as undisciplined, you will act that way. That's the key. Your actions are a reflection of your identity. So if you want to change your actions, you must change who you believe you are. You have a choice. Focus on behavior or redefine identity. Because behavior without identity change is temporary. It fades. It breaks under pressure. But identity? Identity holds. Say it again. I am someone who moves in silence. Not tries. Not sometimes. Is. That's where it starts. Stop reacting. Start choosing. The old you reacts, instantly, emotionally, without control. But the new you chooses. That's the difference. Reaction is automatic. Choice is intentional. Reaction is weak. Choice is power. You have a choice. Live on autopilot or take control. Because every moment gives you an opportunity. React or choose. Someone disrespects you? You can react, or you can stay calm. Something frustrates you? You can react, or you can redirect. Something challenges you? You can react, or you can respond with discipline. That's the shift. And it starts with awareness, catching yourself, interrupting the pattern, replacing reaction with choice. Say it again. I choose my response. Every time. That becomes your identity. Stop chasing, start attracting. The old identity chases. Attention, approval, validation. It needs to be seen. It needs to be liked. It needs to be recognized. But the new identity doesn't chase. It attracts. Because it's built on substance, discipline, consistency, execution. And when those are in place, you don't need to chase anything. Opportunities come. Respect builds. Results speak. That's the key. You have a choice. Chase everything or build something that attracts it. Because chasing is exhausting. It keeps you reactive. It keeps you dependent. It keeps you weak. But attracting, that's power. Say it again. I don't chase. I build. And what you build will bring everything you need. You don't need permission. This is important. You don't need anyone to agree with you. You don't need anyone to support you. You don't need anyone to understand you. You don't need their permission. Say it again. I don't need their permission to change, to grow, to move differently. Because the moment you wait for permission, you delay your own progress, and you've already waited long enough. Let them talk. People will notice the change. They'll see your silence. They'll feel your distance. They'll question your behavior. Let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them assume. Let them talk. Because while they're talking, you're building. While they're reacting, you're observing. While they're explaining, you're executing. That's the separation. That's the advantage. Your results will speak. You don't need to say anything. Not about your plans, not about your goals, not about your progress. Because eventually, it will show. In your discipline, in your focus, in your results. And when it does, it will speak louder than anything you could have said. That's the power of silence. That's the power of consistency. That's the power of quiet discipline. Final command. This is where it becomes real. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You walk away from this and you apply it immediately. In your next conversation, say less. In your next challenge, pause. In your next moment of emotion, control it. You don't wait, you act, because action is the only thing that changes you. Say it one last time. I move in silence, and mean it. Final words. You don't need to be louder. You need to be sharper, calmer, more disciplined. Because in a world full of noise, silence is rare, and rare is powerful. So from this moment forward, you stop chasing attention. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop explaining your every move, and you start building something real, quietly, relentlessly, unstoppably. Because quiet power isn't something you talk about, it's something you become. Now go and become it. Quiet strength is built, not declared. You don't announce this identity. You don't tell people you've changed. You don't explain your new mindset. You don't seek recognition for your discipline. You just live it. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Because real strength doesn't need to be declared. It's felt, seen, respected, without words. You have a choice. Declare your change or prove it. Because proof is silent, and silence is powerful. Say it again. I move differently now. Not for show, not for approval, for yourself. Final takeaway. From this moment forward, you stop relying on temporary effort. You stop trying to act disciplined. You stop hoping to feel strong. And you build something deeper. Identity. An identity that is calm, controlled, disciplined, silent. You don't react. You don't chase. You don't explain. You choose. You build. You execute. That's who you are now. Because the more you repeat it, the more real it becomes. That's the shift. You don't need motivation. You don't need validation. You don't need permission. You need consistency. And now you have it. Because once you build this identity, everything changes. How you think, how you act, how you move. Quietly, powerfully, completely. And now you're ready for the final step. Bringing everything together and stepping fully into the life this discipline creates. Stay silent, stay strong, and become it. Closing. Become the quiet force. You've heard it all now. Not theories, not motivation, not temporary inspiration. Principles, standards, a way of operating that separates you from everyone who is still reacting, still explaining, still chasing. And now, it comes down to one thing. Will you live it? Because information means nothing without execution. You can listen to this entire audiobook, agree with it, feel inspired by it, and still go back to your old habits, still react too fast, still talk too much, still seek approval. That's the reality. You have a choice. Stay the same or become different. This is what you leave behind. You leave behind the noise, the need to explain yourself, the need to be understood, the need to impress. You leave behind reacting to everything, talking without thinking, chasing validation from people who don't matter. That version of you, it's done. Say it clearly. I don't live like that anymore. Because that version was weak. Not permanently, but by habit. And now, you've broken that habit. This is who you become. You become the one who moves in silence, observes everything, controls every response. You become the one who doesn't chase attention, doesn't need validation, doesn't explain their path. You become the one who builds daily, executes consistently, lets results speak. That's you now. Not someday, now. Say it again. I move differently. Because you do. And the difference won't be in what you say, it will be in what you don't say. The core code you follow. From this point forward, your life runs on a new code. Say less, observe more, pause, then decide. No explanation, just execution. Suffer in silence, grow in silence. Show, don't tell. They don't need to understand. I don't chase, I build. This is your foundation. Not something you visit, something you live. Daily, relentlessly, without exception. Because discipline is not an event, it's an identity.
You don't need permission. This is important. You don't need anyone to agree with you. You don't need anyone to support you. You don't need anyone to understand you. You don't need their permission. Say it again. I don't need their permission. To change, to grow, to move differently. Because the moment you wait for permission, you delay your own progress. And you've already waited long enough. Let them talk. People will notice the change. They'll see your silence. They'll feel your distance. They'll question your behavior. Let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them assume. Let them talk. Because while they're talking, you're building. While they're reacting, you're observing. While they're explaining, you're executing. That's the separation. That's the advantage. Your results will speak. You don't need to say anything, not about your plans, not about your goals, not about your progress, because eventually it will show in your discipline, in your focus, in your results. And when it does, it will speak louder than anything you could have said. That's the power of silence. That's the power of consistency. That's the power of quiet discipline. Final command. This is where it becomes real. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You walk away from this and you apply it immediately. In your next conversation, say less. In your next challenge, pause. In your next moment of emotion, control it. You don't wait, you act. Because action is the only thing that changes you. Say it one last time. I move in silence. And mean it. Final words. You don't need to be louder. You need to be sharper, calmer, more disciplined. Because in a world full of noise, silence is rare. And rare is powerful. So from this moment forward, you stop chasing attention. You stop reacting emotionally. You stop explaining your every move. And you start building something real, quietly, relentlessly, unstoppably. Because quiet power isn't something you talk about, it's something you become. Now go and become it. Subscribe my channel. Press the bell icon.